this argument pretty much doomed to failure. This whole conflict doomed to failure until the issue of until the word content is lost, because well, you know, what's the container, for instance? This is art we're talking about, and art is spirit, a conveyance of spirit, and so what is the container? Is the container the painting? Is the container the song? Or is the container the piece of plastic that is put on, or vinyl, or whatever? If we can redefine the art down to its essence, the art, then you get into a question of, okay, well, whose property is the art? Is it the creator, or is it in some part the creators, most of the creators, but is it in some part the gentle listener or the person who's receiving it? Isn't that part of it too? Mm-hmm. Now then you go back to China a few hundred years back, you know, like several hundred years back. There was a collective of people who invented a clock. Now they had no copyright laws in China at the time, and so the people who had this clock, there were about a dozen of them, they could make clocks. But when those people all died, those clocks stopped being made because nobody knew how to make them, and these people kept it a secret, because if they told other people how to make clocks, then everybody would be making clocks. And now this is a fact. So some way has to be provided to protect people who come up with. I'm with you. I'm wearing two hats here. So some way has to be come up with to provide people to make a living making art. Otherwise, musicians will have to go back to law school or back to groceries. And there won't be music because they won't be doing it. They won't be making it. So what I'm saying is, if we look at this less as a commodity and more as something else. Now, a few years back, there is a model for this. A few years back, you know, somewhere toward the beginning of the 20th century, people stopped looking at how much money they had in the bank and started looking at a new term called cash flow. And is some sort of concept like this, I mean, this is something for, I think, everyone to pack under their pillows and say, is there some other way of looking at this so that we can take this entire argument out of the context that it's in now? That's all, you know, is all I have is a question. I'm not sure how it's I guess, kind of, I don't know, philosophical, but I'm not sure how many answers we're going to get this afternoon.
So, thank you, Bob. I could have put it better myself. But really, you already came up with the answer to the question in your working life. I mean, we made songs. Our records didn't sell for shit for a while because they weren't all that great. They weren't as good as your performances in concerts. And, you know, those tapes were traded around freely. And, you know, pretty soon you guys could fill any stadium in the country anytime you felt like it. I mean, mostly because you hauled your audience around with you. But you could. And, the thing was that you'd entered into a relationship with that audience. And that's what, it wasn't a matter of owning that stuff any more than you owned the audience, but there was a relationship between you and the Deadheads that was a service relationship in essence. And, you know, there are all these lawyers out there defending copyright that don't copyright their briefs, I notice. I mean, you know, they actually charge their clients a service fee. And I don't know why that they don't seem to think that's going to work for everybody else. But I couldn't help but look at it. No, I think the answer is there. We just have to get the property model out of the picture, because it's not a good way to monetize something that can be infinitely duplicated at zero cost and infinitely distributed at zero cost. I mean, when it was still encased in books and CDs and things like that, it made sense to look at it as a piece of property. It doesn't anymore.
Well, art is entirely it exists entirely within context. For instance, you look at a cave painting, and it conveys something that the people who were looking at it back then could understand and get something from. And in the case of the Grateful Dead, we were making music with people who understood what we were doing. The question of ownership there is kind of a mutual deal. If you're making art and nobody understands it, then it's worthless. Once people start understanding it, how much ownership should they be accorded? And this argument that's going on now between Silicon Valley and Hollywood doesn't take that into consideration.
All right, so I'm getting multiple signals from multiple people that we're sort of out of time, but I know